Hello and welcome to Voices of BlueScope, the podcast where we go behind the scenes of BlueScope to meet the people who create strength every day. I'm your host, Martin Feld. Thank you for joining us. Today, we're exploring how BlueScope in Australia has been administering a program for the continuing improvement of workplace culture, named Respect is How We Work. The program focuses on intersectionality, which in the Oxford English Dictionary is defined as the interconnected nature of social categorisations such as race, class and gender, as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. In practice, intersectionality recognises that individuals have multiple overlapping identities that can influence their experiences in the workplace. More specifically, intersectionality is critical for contemporary workplaces in the three following areas. 1. Diversity, equity and inclusion. 2. Psychosocial safety. And 3. Employee relations, the last of which has seen increased emphasis in Australia following the introduction of respected work legislation. Respected work stipulates that all organisations must implement measures to prevent and appropriately respond to sexual harassment in the workplace. To delve more deeply into BlueScope's commitment to building respectful workplaces in line with and beyond legislation, Laura Towey, National Employee Relations and Experience Manager, recently organised interviews with employees in Australia who have had direct experience with Respect is How We Work. Laura and her team have played a key role in the delivery and promotion of the program. The resulting interviews are now available as excerpts in a compilation video at TV BlueScope on YouTube. In this podcast episode, we're featuring two of the extended interviews, which were held at our BlueScope Western Port facility in Victoria. You'll hear Laura speaking with Sanam Sharma, Manager People, and Cynthia Gallina, Shift Supervisor, who each share their own professional experiences, views on how to create respectful workplaces, and specific examples from BlueScope's program of work. Let's cross to those two separate interviews now.
I started with BlueScope in 2011, so it'll be about 14 years in January next year. And in that time, I've had 5 different roles through various businesses. Started off as a HR business partner here at Western Port. Before returning to Western Port, I had a 4-year stint as the HR leader for BlueScope's businesses in Malaysia and Singapore.
Fantastic opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for you and your family.
We loved it.
Yeah.
My wife didn't want to come back, but look, it was a great experience. I grew up in India, which is in Asia, obviously, but I never worked in that part of the world, so it was very different, challenging, but very rewarding to be there. But since 22, I've been here at Western Port as the manager of people, and I've been loving it since then.
And what do you think are the key differences you've experienced between managing a Malaysian workplace culture versus managing an Australian workplace culture, particularly from a psychosocial safety perspective?
Yeah, look, I was lucky because whilst I was in Malaysia, BlueScope had started to progress this journey towards respectful behaviours and overall social compliance and those kind of principles. We were actually piloting a few things in Malaysia across BlueScope in that space as well. So I got to play in that a bit. As a BlueScope business, no matter which country you are, the policies are the same, the expectations are the same, and the standards are the same. It is just how you then adjust your own leadership styles and your team's leadership styles and make sure that you communicate a message which is culturally relevant and also culturally sensitive as well, with due respect to the norms in that kind of an environment. And that's just the differences across countries and cultures, but essentially the standard does not dilute. It is the messaging and it is how you practice that with having regard and respect to the people, their cultures, which is the same here in Australia as well.
So what have you found in your role at Western Port have been some of your challenges around respectful behaviours?
Look, very cliched, but I do think, which is a fact, that we for a long period, it was a very male-oriented organisation/workplace that still has the hangovers of that long institutionalization, if you like, and it's a gradual journey towards, it's a bit of an evolution, I would say, and like any piece of evolution, it's always a few steps forward, and there's one hiccup every now and then, but it is just keeping at it, being consistent, and just conveying the vision and conveying the path forward that we stick to.
So what are some of the things that you have done and that you've seen leadership do at BlueScope to help support a respectful and modern workplace?
There's a number of initiatives in place, but at a very basic level, I think there's been this real step up from a leadership perspective at all levels, where we're now treating the behaviour aspects the same as we would take physical safety of people at work many years ago. And there was a zero tolerance approach towards safety, and we now absolutely adopting a zero tolerance approach towards inappropriate workplace behaviours, and that's the fundamental shift, I would say. And then that drives, and that is being driven on the back of a number of tools and programs that we've launched across BlueScope, across ASP, and same at Western Port as well.
Can you tell us some of the programs that you've seen, some of the tools that you're using?
Yeah. So look, when I first started a couple of years ago here at Western Port, we launched and piloted a program called Step Up program that was done across all of the departments here at Western Port. That is predominantly a program which focuses on bystander action and empowering bystander action. It is a really nice, pragmatic tool for managers, supervisors, and leaders to have. And then to drive those behavioural conversations with the teams. And in doing so, every crew, every team discusses it and sets up their own acceptable workplace behaviours for that individual department or crew, which is then used by the team members to hold each other to account. So that's a really empowering program. Then towards March this year, when the legislation around respectful behaviours came out, since then, we've had a number of initiatives. There was a video that was initially launched by the GM of people for ASP, and that was rolled out, just setting up the expectations moving forward. We've then launched an e-learning called Respectful Behaviours. That has been extremely well received for an e-learning. We've had complimentary messages saying it was engaging, it conveyed the messages, it was scenario-based, and it was a lot of our employees actually role-played in that learning. So it really hit home, and I think we had a lot of impact through that. We've had poster campaigns. We've drafted posters around respectful behaviours, and we put them across the site. We've used our employee self-service to actually put through messages where we've asked people to actually click and understand and read the policies that we have in place in this space. We do a lot of publicising of the avenues in which people can make any complaints if there are any issues. That include our hotlines, that includes our ethics team and their contact numbers. We have on-site representatives, delegates, where we have really good relationships, and sometimes that's the forum that any issues they may come through. So there's a number of things we are trying to do. It's a holistic approach in my view. And that all is aimed at really making sure that people are aware of their rights, responsibilities, but also aware of what BlueScope standards are in place and what are the remedies available to them as well, just in case there is an issue. We do also have a free confidential counselling service, which we rely on a lot with people in these kind of circumstances, and that's been, again, very well utilised and publicised as well. As a HR team, all of us, we've had to undertake trauma-informed investigations training, and again, that has helped evolve our take on these matters as well. So we actually make sure that the welfare of the people involved in these matters, in these investigations, is always front and centre, and that has given rise to some really beneficial outcomes where people have been looked after in terms of their welfare, but we've not compromised on the standards and the outcomes of those investigations.
Fantastic. How do you link the psychosocial safety with all the requirements around respect at work and also all the tools you've just talked about?
As I said earlier, as an organisation, we've always taken a lot of pride in making sure that people are safe at the workplace, and for a long time that has been bracketed around physical safety at work. And that's that next piece. We are another program that we are taking through across ASB, all our employees, is empowering healthy and safe teams. And that again is an approach where we're focusing heavily on yes, the physical safety, but also the psychological safety of employees within the workplace. And in that space, we even started using a lot of our policy entitlements and enterprise agreement entitlements around leave and personal leave to assist people who may face, psychological wellness matters and try to assist them through that. And not just necessarily related to complaints only, but as a matter of mental well-being and mental wellness at a more holistic level. We have mental health first aiders on site. They are trained individuals who act as first responders in circumstances where people may inform us of any mental well-being issues. So, as I said earlier, it's a multi-pronged approach aimed at making sure that we are not just talking the talk, but we actually walking the talk as well, and genuinely looking after our people when they experience any such circumstances.
Okay, what do you think is next? What is left to do? What would be your advice?
I reckon it's just the starting piece, to be honest. It is a very management-driven approach at the moment, which it needs to be, because for a lot of people it's new, it's different. I think the end game probably should be when it becomes a bit more embedded, entrenched understanding, like safety, physical safety has been with BlueScope. It took us 50 years probably to get there with physical safety. Hopefully not 50 years for this aspect, but it is that space where it is just taken and understood as a requirement of job, as a standard of performance and workplace expectations. We don't have to rely on newer and newer programs, but just it should be a way of living at Western Port and at BlueScope.
Fantastic. Now, to all of those organisations out there that haven't yet started the journey and they're looking at the various pieces of legislation and, quite frankly, freaking out about it, what advice would you give them in terms of starting to help make those environments more positive?
Yeah, look, don't be daunted by a piece of legislation, because a piece of legislation is a broad brush across multiple sectors, employers. So just take your time, reflect on it, understand how it interacts with your workplaces, and start small if you like. But you've got to make a start. You cannot achieve any of your diversity-related targets. You cannot achieve any of your workplace employee experience related targets in the modern world if you do not make a change or a step change. But you've got to start somewhere. You've got to start coaching your leaders and your managers. I still remember when we started on the diversity journey around gender about 6 or 7 years ago. The biggest piece of work that we had to do at that time was with our leaders, not with our workplace, with our workforces. So you've got to start at the top. You've got to get an understanding of and a consistent alignment of the expected outcomes, and then it has to be driven top down in a very consistent manner until, again, it is embedded and entrenched and understood at all the levels. But you've got to, all your different levels of leadership, you've got to have some interventions, and I know for sure that when we started, we did a lot of work around unconscious biases, and as much as we all think we are evolved and we understand what equity and diversity and inclusion is, we all come with our biases, and somebody needs to hold that consistent mirror to all of us just to align us.
Thank you.
I'm here at the Western Port Customer Service Centre and I'm Shift Supervisor. I've been in this role for about 4 or 5 months now. I've been with BlueScope for about 6 years and I started as a process operator at the 5-Star Mill.
And what has been your major learnings along the way?
So I first came to BlueScope out of a completely different industry. I was in property and administration before this, so the learning curve has been super steep and I was a complete fish out of water. So I learned everything about heavy industry, and steel was all new to me 6 years ago. So I started off just in operations. I stepped into a bit of a SPO or senior process operator role in cold reduction at the 5-star mill. Learned a bit more about people management, started to do some filling in secondments as supervisor over there. Then I joined the Leader Accelerator program, which provided some extra training to sort of help set me up to take on this role, permanent position as a shift supervisor.
And how many people do you supervise in your current role?
It varies a little bit because we have a lot of B-flex in this department, but it's about 15. Crews are about 15 people.
Okay, and is that over a rotating shift?
Yeah, so here we work a 12-hour shift, days and nights. It's 10 shift patterns, so 10 shifts over a 3-week cycle.
Okay. And what are the pros of doing that kind of work?
So for us, it works really well. We still have our weekends. So in this department, people don't work a Saturday or a Sunday. The 12-hour patterns are great because you generally get good time off as well. So you quite often will have 4-day weekends, which people really enjoy. And there's a lot of flexibility with working, night shift. People enjoy that they have more time during the day for things like school pickups. And also just, getting a lot of good time off is probably the best perk.
And what are some of the cons of working that kind of work?
I think, like for anyone doing shift work, it can affect your sleep. Working night shift is something you need to get used to, and it's not necessarily for everyone. But for those that can manage it and make it work, it can provide a really good work-life balance.
Okay, fantastic. And I hear you've been doing a wellbeing program with your crew, trialling at some new wellbeing activities. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so just recently at the service centre over the last 6 weeks or so, we've been holding some wellbeing workshop seminars. So we're doing some breath work, we're doing some mindfulness, learning how we can regulate our own nervous systems using our breath and techniques like that, just to help us sort of maintain our own energy, learn about how we can better look after our own well-being, promote things like sleep and calm, focus. Really wide range of benefits and something we can take with us anywhere in life.
And how's the crew responded to that? Because you don't see much of that in heavy industry.
Yeah, so it's definitely quite new for us here, something that most people hadn't experienced anything like that before. So before we started, there was maybe a little bit of resistance. A few people were sort of like, "Oh, what is this that we're going to do? It sounds a bit weird." But the feedback has been really good. I think most people have really enjoyed it and taken something out of it. The feedback, a few people have mentioned certain techniques that they've taken home and tried with the kids or, in their own life outside of work. And I think we've definitely noticed a bit of a shift in the energy here as well. People are sort of more calm and sort of better able to deal with stress.
Fantastic. That sounds really interesting. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions about respect at work. You would be aware that respect at work became legislation in this country, and that's specifically around sexual harassment, at the same time that the psychosocial code of practice was released across all of the states. And effectively, all that means is that organisations like BlueScope and every other organisation now have a positive duty to provide a great workplace for people to be in. So what are some of the things that you have seen in BlueScope that you think are helping to work towards a positive duty?
Okay, well, it probably starts with our Respect at Work training that everyone does, our e-learnings. There's interactive videos that everybody watches and goes through to help them see and understand things from another perspective, maybe the perspective of a minority or someone that's different to them. So that's, sort of, I suppose, the ground level. And aside from that, we'd spend a lot of time in crew meetings and just when we're all interacting together as a group, being inclusive and making sure that everyone is comfortable and understands that we all treat each other with dignity and respect.
When you did the e-learning for respectful behaviours, most people detest e-learning, but we got a lot of positive feedback on this kind of e-learning. What do you think was the difference?
I think the difference, for me at least, was that it was a little bit more interactive. You needed to, there were options and you could click on things and you had a bit more of a say in how that training was delivered to you, even though it was filmed and it was a video. It was a bit of a choose your own adventure in a way, which I just think made it more interesting rather than just sitting and watching a video. You got to sort of be a bit more involved.
Did you see lots of people from where you work in that video?
Yes, it was nice to see some familiar faces, and certainly the setting was like looking at home.
Well, it was home, wasn't it? Yeah. What other things do you think we should do as an organisation to help with that creation of a positive workplace?
I think anything that we can do that brings people together is good. Anything that we can do to help bridge the gap of people who are different, because we're all different and diverse, but things that we can find common ground together with. So any sort of activities that are team building or spending time together or coming together, whether it's over like a lunch or something like that people can just have a chance to connect on a human level rather than only through work.
Yeah, okay, that's great advice. And do you think things like your wellbeing workshops that you're doing are another good example of how you can promote a positive workplace?
Yeah, I think something like the wellbeing sessions is exactly that, something where people can come together on a more human level, something where we all have nervous systems, we all breathe. So it's something that we can sort of relate to each other on and have, a little bit of vulnerability and sort of get to know each other on another level.
Yeah. And one of the things we're finding is we have like a multi-generational workforce now, which is probably the first time ever in our history where we've had 5 generations of different kinds of expectations all smushed together. Do you think that creates some unique challenges?
I think it does. I definitely think there's some unique challenges with, you have someone straight out of school who's, maybe 20 years old working alongside someone who's potentially in their 70s. Yeah, so they come from completely different lifestyles and have different, different histories and different values. But I think there's also a lot of really interesting benefits to things like that, because they do work closely together and get to know each other and see things from another perspective. And I think there's something really special about that as well.
And do you think the programs that are in place help to bridge that divide?
Yeah, I certainly, I can't remember specifically the scenario, but I do remember in the recent videos there was a really good one that showed something about sort of an older gentleman's perspective versus a younger girl who was looking to further her career, and he sort of was starting off thinking, oh no, maybe it's not for you, it's not the right time of life, maybe you want to settle down and have kids. And she was like, oh, that's not your position to say. And by the end of the video he got it, and it was nice, but you could see also that she understood that he was coming from a nice place even though he kind of had the wrong idea.
Thank you. So what support mechanisms are in place when everything we've done doesn't work? What support mechanisms do we have in place for our people?
So basically for our people, when things don't go well and they need to speak up, their first point of call is probably their supervisor or direct manager, just to have a talk and a chat. They can also go to the People Services Department. We have the EAP program, which is counselling, either it can be on the phone or online, and they can also jump on, and if they're not comfortable speaking to someone in person, they can sort of lodge a complaint or a query online about anything that they might be having trouble with.
And do you find that employees are comfortable to use those mechanisms? Do they know about them? Are they, regularly told what their options are?
Yeah, so it's as supervisors, we definitely always make sure that we are mentioning things like the employee assistance program and letting them know that our door's always open if they do need to speak to someone. They also know that they can talk to other people on their crew, whether it's their HSR or just someone else that they want to turn to for support, who can then talk to the supervisor with them or for them, or just help them make a choice of how they want to handle a situation as it comes up. But the most important thing, I think, is that we just make sure everyone feels not only safe but also encouraged to speak up if they need to.
Now, you've been both an employee at the line level and now you're a supervisor. Have you felt well supported along the way?
I have. I've been very lucky. I started off with a fantastic supervisor who was very open and very easy to speak to. Having said that, I did start 6 years ago. I joined that crew as the only female on a crew of 9 men, which was, intimidating. And I had a great experience, but had I not, I'm not sure whether I would have been super comfortable at that time to speak up. Whereas I feel now that that's changing all the time and improving, and I think that anyone I know on my team in my department would feel comfortable speaking to someone, not necessarily me in the first instance, if that's not what they're, if they're not super comfortable or if they're feeling a bit intimidated, but they have each other and they have those other options that are maybe a little more anonymous, or speaking to someone who they don't know or don't work with directly.
What could we have done, do you think, to make your transition into that crew of 9 easier for them and easier for you?
Oh, I think it may be something like even though there wasn't another female in that crew, but having like a buddy somewhere else in the plant that I could have been set up with as a bit of a support person that I could have had a catch up with to just chat and talk about things.
So
another female, some sort of peer support would have been helpful.
Okay, Awesome. So your best moments in the time that you've been here?
Oh gosh, that's a tricky one on the spot.
Tricky,
yeah.
I know.
Well, I think recently I have really enjoyed some of the moments I've already had here at the service centre with the crew. Just when we sort of come together for something that's a bit challenging. We had stock take a few months ago now, but just a big day where it was all hands on deck and everyone had to sort of really pitch in and get work done, and we were all learning things and doing things for the first time, but everyone was smiling and laughing and had a great day, and things like that make my day.
So if you were going to provide managers or owners of businesses or HR people some advice on what they should focus their efforts on really improving employees' experience?
I think the advice I would give them to improve employee experience would just be to interact more on a human level and just give them a bit more experience of the things that they enjoy at work, and bringing people together more in a way that's sort of about connection, human connection, rather than just always professional.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank you.
That wraps up our 2 featured interviews. We thank Laura, Sanam and Cynthia for their involvement in this episode. Make sure to check the links and show notes to learn more about what you just heard. For example, don't forget to visit our TV BlueScope YouTube channel, where you'll find the video interview compilation that includes excerpts not only of Sanam's and Cynthia's responses, but additional BlueScope people in Port Kembla, New South Wales. Thank you for listening to the Voices of BlueScope podcast. We look forward to having you again soon.